Point being, the basics are where it all falls. Understanding the mental aspects and the technical aspects is where it all falls. I'm speaking today from an entrepreneurship standpoint. You know, I started, let's get this here. Hopefully this will work. That's the startup. elitefts.com, 1998. There it was. That was my office, right here. I got a computer for Christmas that was a rebuilt computer that my brother put together, and started answering questions for deepsquatter.com or Strength Online. They're just training related questions about Westside. A lot of the information that I saw out there was inaccurate. It wasn't true. And it wasn't misleading. It wasn't right. So I wanted to help. So I sent Jason Burnell an email and I asked him how I could help as far as answering questions. About the same time, Louis Simmons at Westside Barbell wanted to get out of selling smaller items, manta rays, sleds. You know, he just wanted to focus on the reverse hyper and so forth. So I said, okay, I'll take over the small items and go from there. So I started doing from the Q&A on somebody else's board. We put together a banner site. It's just a site with like 10 items with prices. And I was in the web business. And I thought that was a website, by the way. And I got contracted to do a seminar out of South Carolina on the Westside methods, and I went to do the seminar. Long story short, we're driving to dinner. Somebody in the back seat says, "You ever thought about having a seminar or having a web page?" Dude, I got one. Like, no, you don't. And so we discussed it a little bit. He had a friend that had just left a big corporation that was starting his own internet web design company, and he needed a beta site. One of the things that I've learned very, very early on, and I'll talk about it with the values, is opportunity. You need to always be looking at opportunity. You need to always be looking at everybody at opportunity. What can you offer? What can they offer? And said, what the heck? Let's see what happens. You know, so we sat down for dinner, and the thing I told him is the only thing I want is a Q&A. I said, I just want to be able to answer these questions, and I want to be able to do it fast, because right now, if anybody was reading the site, you know, anybody read the Q&A back then, the Strength Online? Okay, it'd take like a month, you know. And then obviously you know my grammar back then was dead on. I mean, it was some classic stuff. Jim still reminds me of some of the errors that were there, and I wanted to be able to answer a question that if he was to ask, I could answer it, and bam, he would have it right away. That's all I wanted. So the website actually started out as a Q&A. And then after that, I started getting asked questions on, you know, where can you get this Russian manual, because I was referring different stuff. That's when we looked at, well, let's go ahead and let's put a shopping cart as part of this and kind of see what happens from there. But if you get Powerlifting USA, you can go back and look at some of the ancient ads. You know, I tried to find some for the presentation, but it seems like every piece of marketing material I had back then I can't find, thankfully, because it was bad. So seminars were a big part for many years. You know, it's the one slide that we found from the old site. It's I think it's like Wacky Back or something like that. You can go look at the website from like 10 years ago. There was a listing of the seminars that I had for the year, and just on the list of the seminars people could sign up for, there was like 30. All right, that didn't count the seminars that I was doing in the middle of the day or doing for the company I was working for as a trainer. You know, in one year I would do between 50 to 60 seminars. It may be for 8 people, it may be for 100. I've done seminars in bomb shelters. I've done them in churches. I've done them in universities. I've done them in gyms. You name it, I've done in barns, a warehouse, everywhere. The best one I ever did was in a basement that nobody could stand up in. Shorter people could, but if you were 6 foot tall, you could not stand up in the, you had to walk like this. All right, and the guy only did bench stuff. because you couldn't squat. So there were benches, dumbbells, and all this other kind of stuff. Craziest thing I ever did. I'll never forget that one. Packed, like 25 people in this one basement. But the thing was, I loved it. You know, you're out there, you're helping people. That's a lot of where the passion and so forth comes in. Over the years, I got into the home business. Now, the reason I had to move was because we were selling products. In UPS, I didn't want to keep taking packages to the post office. I figured there had to be a better way. I didn't know what it was. Now, when I say we were selling products, don't get me wrong, I'm talking like 2, 3 a day. You know, if the phone rang, it was like, oh, this is awesome. You know, maybe I'm going to sell something. Then you talk to some guy for an hour about their bench press, and he never buys anything because I forgot to say, hey, I got a bench press video. So I needed a location to where, because I was still working as a personal trainer, where I could leave the packages and then go to work and not worry about somebody ripping them off. Because the last house was like 2 blocks away from the hood. So we found a house kind of out in the country a little bit. Notice the little nook here by the doorway? Perfect! I could leave the packages in that little corner and nobody from the street could see it. That's why I got the house. All right? So that's the home business. That's the website at that point in time evolved a little bit. That's how I spent half of my day. The other half was in a blue chair, you know, waiting for the phone to ring. I still worked as a trainer, so it was a matter of getting up early in the morning, you know, answering the emails. Everything ran through a cell phone at that time when cell phones were expensive, you know, so the whole business line was running through a cell phone. I'd return the calls in between clients. Then I'd have to get home, and as soon as I got home, I'd have to start packaging everything up, run the credit card, you know, because it'd be like an order, and get everything set out. So the business was being operated during the time when I was doing 40 to 50 billable hours of personal training out of somebody's club. All right, so when you're in business and you're in a home business or whatever it is, there's something called work. There is no 2-hour work week bullshit. All right, and I'll apologize for my language because a lot of the stuff that's out there drives me absolutely insane. You know, you're in business, you know, there's a reason you are successful. All right, and it's because you make wise decisions, you take advantage of opportunity, and you work. All right, and you work sometimes a lot. All right, so you better like what you're doing, which we'll touch on later. So the best thing about this picture here is my head. You know, it's when I was still lifting, so it might still be there now, but, you know, from all the max effort work. And, but you can see, well, it's not that clear. Up there at the top, it said Ask Dave. The Q&A was just Ask Dave. Before I could start paying myself, and it was probably 6 years into the business before I even paid myself. I was paying 2 employees before I paid myself. I realized early on, because a lot of my clients were successful in their own businesses or with law firms or with lobbying or wherever it was. I worked in a corporate health club, so my clients were not athletes. You know, they were executives. And I feel I did a very good job training them. You know, I used West Side stuff for them. My girls were benching 135, guys were benching 300. I had great results with them, had a good system. We'll talk about that, you know, at the end of the seminar, and I'll do the training section. And they helped me tremendously. And they were always upfront and straight out honest with me. They were a big driving force in telling me it's time for you to leave and just go do this full force. They were also the people that sat down, and when I had a conference or meeting with them, and came straight out and said, Dave, you have no idea whatsoever what you're doing. And I remember saying back to them, I know that. I'll figure it out, but I know where I'm going. All right, so then it was just a matter of trying to figure it out. And at that point in time, the E-Myth was referred to me as far as a consulting firm. And I will give them a plug here. It's called Business Works. That's who I worked with. My coach was Melinda Lawson. Back then, and I don't know how the E-Myth program is right now. Back then, it was not easy. It was a 5-year program, and it was a lot of work. And it was learning how to run a business in your business. What I've been told recently is that they've condensed the program down to a year. When I'm asked to give my reviews on that protocol, as I look back now, I think there's good stuff that you can use, and I think there's other stuff that's not so good. All right, and I will explain that as I go through my presentation, what I mean by that. It did help. It did definitely help, because I had no idea what I was doing. But at the same time, I use a small percentage of it anymore, you know, as the business grew and as it evolved. And it was not cheap. I mean, back then,